Hello, everyone, and welcome to What to See with Val. And today it is Friday. It is the final Friday of the Sundance Film Festival 2023. And I have as my co-host, my guest host, my chatting buddy, my Sundance buddy, Mark. We've spent a lot of time together this week.
You forgot cameraman.
Well, we're going to get into that.
Yes, we did spend a lot of time this weekend.
Sundance Film Festival back in person, starting last Thursday, and I went up 8 days. 8 days up the hill into Park City. So excited that it was back in person. And I did something this year that I hadn't done before, and that was do the press lines. And I think a lot of people saw me posting about the press lines, and a lot of people thought, because they kept messaging me, that it was the line that the press stood in to get into the films. No, not the press line. But I can see how that would be what you would think that is.
That's a good way to interpret words.
Yeah, we're going to get into the press line in a minute. But Mark, if you haven't seen Mark on my show before, or if you haven't checked him out with Visually Stunning, that's his podcast that I frequent as well. We like to talk movies back and forth. We are both members of the Utah Film Critic Association. We have been nonstop watching films forever. I feel like
the first week of December, I think, is when that really started.
September was a crazy month this year. I think that this year is like September, and then for 1 week in December, we maybe got a breath.
Christmas, New Year's week. Yeah.
And then we jumped right into Sundance, which I am not complaining. We do this because we like to watch movies, but when people meet up with me and they see me at places like Sundance or at the grocery store, which happened last week, and they're like, hey, who's in this movie about? There is so much in my brain that I can't answer any question.
Yeah.
I write it all down in my phone, and that's how I get there. But this year was exciting. It was very cold at Sundance. You were walking around like it was 60, 70 degrees outside.
Yeah. Well, that's not true. I had on a t-shirt, a hoodie, and a heavy coat. If I remembered to put my gloves on, I put my gloves on. If I remembered to put a hat on, I put my hat on. But cold, I mean, unless there's wind, that doesn't bother me. Yeah. And luckily there wasn't a ton of wind. Even walking in the snow with it snowing actively doesn't really bother me. I quite enjoy it. But yeah, luckily we didn't have a lot of wind for the most part. But yeah, I many times I was thinking to myself, she's just never going to speak to me again after this weekend.
No, you were great, because I had never done working press like this at Sundance before. So I really didn't know how it worked. And I said, Mark, can I just come hang out with you for a couple of days and like learn how to do this the right way? Because I always watch them from home, or I'm up there working lounges or doing interviews or whatever, but I hadn't done it like this, and you were nice enough to not tell me no. And then I even talked you into like doing some camera work for me.
Yeah, okay. So let me. I already posted the 3 press lines we did over on my YouTube channel, Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. Go look, and I explained why I was the cameraman. And Cliff's Notes version is that A, you're really much better at talking to people than I am. But 2 is because of positioning, it helps to have the tall person in the back with the camera so that they can reach up and try to turn and maybe get a better shot. And I point out with arrows in some of my videos why we can't get the shots that we wanted to get.
Yeah.
But no, I had not done press lines either. So you actually made me do something that I had never done. I think when they're run well, I think they're glorious.
I don't know that I'd say glorious, but they're definitely an experience. And I'm not going to get into the good, the bad, the ugly that I posted about the press lines in this episode. This episode is going to be solely about the movies. And I want to do a huge shout out to the volunteers that have just been fantastic all week. Just people helping me out, telling us the right places to go and how to get there. Their scanner's not working and just like having a smile on their face the entire time and recognizing people. They see a lot of people, and every time I went back to the same theater, it's like, hey, you're back. And just like it was just, we have the best volunteers in the nation here in Utah. And if you didn't notice it, you still have a chance to go see screenings in Salt Lake and Park City. And I believe one of the online passes is still available as well this weekend if you are missing out. And Mark, you got to do some Slamdance stuff.
I did.
Which is very cool. So if you want to read about some of the Slamdance movies, Mark will have those up on his podcast as well. But let's jump into it. So one of the first movies that we got to see out of the gate, do you even remember what our first movie was?
According to my list, as I look over here, that was The Longest Goodbye.
The Longest Goodbye. You are right. And right before we get into that, sorry, I wanted to do a shout out. One of my favorite movies from Sundance last year, called Living with Bill Nighy, is out in Utah today. I gave this movie an A. I talked about it on Good Things Utah today. I talked about it last year, but that's how long it takes for some of these movies to actually get from a festival to a theater that you can go see it. And he just this week, it's been a busy week. We got Academy Award nominations, and then we have Sundance Film Festival, but he was nominated for Best Actor in this movie called Living. But it's out in 4 cities this weekend, and Salt Lake City is one of them. And I highly recommend that you go see Living. I've seen it 3 times now. And again, I just really enjoy this movie and his performance. But let's jump in.
Bill Nighy is great. Let me just do that because I actually watched that the night before.
Yeah, I didn't know if you'd seen it or not.
The night before the Utah Film Critics, before we did our balloting, I was finally able to see it. And I thanked everyone twice for making me cry because of that movie. That movie is exceptionally good. And he was actually my first choice. That is not who the UFCA went with as Best Actor. But he was actually my first ballot choice.
Yeah, I thought he was great in the movie, but he's great in everything I've seen him in, even when the movie isn't great. Like there's always something about him that draws me in, and him playing this character. And I'm not going to give you any spoilers about it, but we are doing an episode on Monday on Living. So go watch it this weekend, and then Monday tune into Movies That Make Us, because we'll have our episode out and what the guys thought about that, and we'll jump into it. But it's really about like taking care of yourself and living the life that you should be living, and not the life that you think you should be living because of what's going on around you. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. There's obviously more to it, but it's like romantic in the best way, but not the way that you would think it's romantic. It's like life romantic.
It's not romantic love.
It's romance in just living and discovering things and waking up and realizing that there is more, and that it's not too late and you can do more. And I can't say enough about it, but I will on Monday.
It's how you live your life as opposed to, or how you do the things in your life as opposed to what you settle for, the way you settle for things. Yes. So it could be the same thing, but your approach to it can be different. So it's just really great.
I'm glad we agree on that one. The Longest Goodbye is a documentary, and if you watch my show at all, you know that I love documentaries, and that's usually what I spend most of my time watching when I do any festival, but especially Sundance. And this year I think I was like equal parts documentary, equal parts like regular movies. But this one was great. It's not what I thought it was going to be.
No.
Did you expect for the story that we got to be what it was?
No, because it's a documentary that it's supposed to be. It's kind of sold as the preparation to send humans to Mars, and what that entails. But what it is this really, I'm going to say meandering, but I mean it in a not bad way. Look at human psychology and how humans deal with isolation, separation, small group dynamics, and the various studies that they did, because there weren't any for something like this. What happens if you lock people in their house for 2 weeks to slow
or
the
a
curve?
year,
For example. So those studies haven't been done, and so NASA, who is really the driver behind this, is they're trying to find out ways to do it. So they start doing kind of off the books studies on actual astronauts on the space station, but voluntary. They don't have to do it. Don't think they're experimenting on them or anything. But so they kind of have to do the stuff off the books because, again, of another aspect of human psychology, which is you don't want to be seen as less. So they can't get real information unless the subjects are isolated or insulated against possible I mean, it's a really weird study, a really weird way to look at it. But I liked it mostly because it as much as it's a documentary about how they've approached it, it is more of like a pre-documentary of what they want to do going forward. So it's a really weird, for me, it was a weird documentary.
Yeah, it was weird, but I feel like it was in a good way because I think when most of us think about NASA, when we think about space travel, we think about the science of it and the discovery and, the coolness of getting in a spaceship and astronaut training. But what we don't think about is psychologically what space travel does to the very small amount of the population that actually gets to go. So not only are you going up in space where you are isolated from the world, but you're also probably one of maybe 100, 300 people that get to ever do this this, right? Because once it's to the point where it's a regular everyday thing that we do as a society, everybody that helped the stepping stones, they're going to be gone, right?
Yep.
So you're secluded as a job and you're secluded as a human. And it really opened my eyes because we all think, okay, well, it takes a long time to get there, but this is cool. You get to be in a rocket ship. You get to be an astronaut. But
and on about day 5, when you've done the same thing for 5 days in a row, and you're looking forward to 18 more months of that.
Yeah, I mean, just like being on the International Space Station and being up there, and they show that they have cameras on them at all times. They're washing their hair, they're brushing their teeth, they're going to sleep, and you are constantly, it is the Truman Show. But Truman knows the camera is there, right? And so they constantly feel like they're under a microscope. So that's a stress that you're adding to everything that you're doing, plus the stress of not seeing your family or friends, plus the stress of, I only have so much time to be here, and they have jobs to do. They're not just up there like hanging out. No. They actually have to do experiments. They have to make sure that the people that come up after them get to further something else. So if you don't get anything done, if you have a bad day,
that's a wasted day.
Everyone knows. Everybody knows that you're having a bad day. And they showed one astronaut that was up there, and she had kids, and she would try and have conversations and regular meetings through video, and it's technology. You can't rely on it. We all know this. We're on technology right now, but at any moment, it could go out. And so you've got a kid at home, a husband at home that miss that person, she misses them, and then they're all getting frustrated because they can't talk together, but she can't do anything. She can't just get in her car and go over. She's not going to see her kid for a year and just hope that everything's going to be okay. That's also stressful.
So that before we get too far, let's talk about this. We're doing StreamYard, but we've all done Zoom meetings over the last Zoom, Teams, pick one, Skype, doesn't matter. And as much as we hate that, when they first went up to the space station, it was all audio, scratchy. Then they got video, but it was a Windows 95. So, with really crappy cameras and connections and data. Now imagine that you can't get even close to that. It's gone. There's no communication. There's no audio. If you send audio, it's 3 days to get back to Earth. And so there's no interaction. But yeah, so as bad as we think we have it now, it was worse then. And the farther we get from Earth, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah. And I get it. They choose to do this, but I think, they're monitoring to make sure that astronauts, especially in the beginning, that they could just take the physical abuse.
Yes.
And that they could think quickly if something were to go wrong in space. But talking about feelings and emotions could quickly get you off the team, so nobody talks about it.
Yep.
Right? And that's something they felt the entire time. But what I found most kind of cool, and I know this isn't like a cool thing, but when it's actually happening, but the fact that when they had the collapse in the mine where they had, what was it, like 25 people in Chile that were in this mine for, was it 6 months? I didn't realize that
they said it was going to be like 5 months or 6 months or something. And I think they got them out in like 83 days.
80. Okay. Well, it was a long time.
It was a long time, but it was
a long time, but they called in NASA. They called in this specific psychologist that had been working on all of this from NASA to basically help not only the people underground, but the family above ground stay in the right psychological space. Yep. And I just thought, like, it's so true, because most of us experienced this feeling during the pandemic. Like the first 2 weeks were like, yay, we get to work from home, and then I ended up working from home for a year in this basement, and mentally not leaving my house to do those things that I did every day, get up, go to work, go to the gym, all those things. Like, that was really rough for me. And I could get in my car and drive around if I wanted to. So it was just that change of, what was going on. And so I think what this doctor, who is probably one of the most sincere people I've ever seen in a documentary in my life, I think his life's work is super important. And you could tell that he cared about what he was doing.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And you have to, or the data you gather means nothing.
You see people that like their job and they get in there and do it, but I feel like he really felt responsible for what was taking place.
He really understood the importance, the long-term importance. This isn't about him publishing a paper or getting a Nobel Prize at some point. This is literally long-term future of humanity. And he really did grasp that. And so, I think that really did come through in the documentary.
I do think that there was some weird sequencing, and like there were maybe a little bit of like rhythm, where they kind of put things. But overall, I enjoyed it. I think we'll probably see it streaming. It didn't say who it's gotten picked up from yet, but it's totally a National Geographic thing. If you've seen Good Night, Oppie.
Was on Amazon. Yeah.
It's on Amazon. I feel like this is going to go to Amazon, or it's going to go to Disney Plus or something like that. And so that's good, because everybody will get to see it. My grade for this is a solid B. I think for me, it was good. It wasn't the best I've seen on this topic, but there was definitely things I learned about it. There were things that I wrote down so I could go Google later, because I wanted to know more about some of these specific things. But it was solid B for me.
Yeah, if I was going to grade it, I'd give it a B minus. Again, for me, it's mostly because you're right. There were some flow issues and some the way they, and so what and that construction and the look forward. It almost felt like a progress report in a lot of ways. So it's like, it is very interesting. If you're interested in space or, just human psychology, it's really, there's a lot of cool stuff in it. I think as a documentary, that's as an end product, I think this is where I would mark it down. But I think the information in it is really good.
And those of you that are watching or listening right now, we are live. So thank you. I appreciate it. But you can also put in comments, ask us questions. If we can answer them about any of the movies or about Sundance in general. A lot of people ask me today, they're going up this weekend. The second weekend is the best time to go, because it's not as crazy. If you want to know where to park, if you all of those things. Also, Mark, I did get you one of these.
Awesome.
It's one of, I want to say thank you to Sapphire. I do have a Chase Sapphire card, and they had a lodge that you could get into if you had a card, and there was food and drinks and water bottles and warmth. And that was an extra perk to having that card, which I just booked a whole bunch of travel with on my points. They do not sponsor the show, but if you want to, Chase Sapphire, you
Right.
totally can. The next one I want to talk about was one that I have not stopped thinking about since we saw it, and that's Birth Rebirth. Like, I cannot get this movie out of my head. I mean, let's jump into it. Before we get to it, though, I don't know if you told me if you liked this one or not.
No, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it fell in. It's a horror. It fell in the midnight section, and odds are I'm gonna like them if they fall in midnight section. No, I enjoy it because it's just crazy enough to stay real enough. But no, there's a lot of good, the guts of this are just really solid all the way around. It's about motherhood, so that's why Val is asking
it's about motherhood, but it's also about, like, I mean, it's very odd, and I love odd movies, but I also this movie has a fantastic, just booming female cast. The main three characters in the movie are female, and they just rocked it. Like, I cannot stop thinking about it. But it's also like this thriller and horror movie in the same mind frame of Frankenstein. Like, it's not a slasher. You are gonna see things because the main character is a doctor, not only a doctor, but she is what's her title?
What, the scientist or the mother?
The scientist, because she dissects.
She's a coroner.
She basically is, but they called her something else in the movie. I can't remember. It's in my notes, but she's a coroner, but like she has a doctor title.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a scientist, and we don't want to give spoilers because I definitely want you to experience this on your own. But basically, from the head up, she's all about this. She's all about her brain. She's all about what she can do with it, and everything from the neck down. Like she said in the interview that she did with us, this actress, her body is a science project, and she's giving it to science. It's a tool. She has totally detached herself from it, and she is all about the science and this project that she's working on. And she meets up with a nurse that works at the same hospital, and they're trying to solve a problem together. About the nurse's daughter. I'm not going to spoil it, but about the nurse's daughter. And it gets into the point of where I think science and medical is always at. And it's like, to move forward into science when it comes to cloning, when it comes to not dying, when it comes to all of these things, like, do we want to move forward into science and go as far as we think we can go, or is there a moral question that we should ask ourselves here, like, how far is too far?
Malcolm's axiom.
And then you throw in motherhood or parenthood or the love of another person. How far would you be willing to go past where you feel comfortable on that moral line of science? How far are you willing to go over it to save the person that you love? So there is a lot of thinking happening.
Yeah,
here.
no, it is. It's ethics. Everyone has an ethical line, and then it affects them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, that ethical line gets a little blurry, or gets completely wiped off the thing. And that's what this movie is about. Because what you would have considered the first ethical line, you almost can understand it because of parenthood. But then the way it just keeps creeping, these tangential little lines that they both keep having to cross to get back to this first thing is, it's, everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth. Everyone has an opinion until they're, they have to, everyone believes in rules until they have to play by them, is one of my favorite analogies. So that's what this movie is, there's a lot of it about, but then you bring, just life into it. And, it's now the debate starts. So yeah, this is a movie that will make you think. It should make you talk. It should make you worry, and in the end you're going to go, well, what would I do?
Yeah.
And again, that's the question. That's what makes a great, we'll call it a thriller. There's horrific things in here,
but I think
but horrific in an ethical or moral way.
I think the pacing of it is definitely a thriller. I love the pacing because there were moments where you were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? But then there were like these slower moments where you're being able to take everything in. And it's almost like they give you a chance to catch up with everything that you saw. And then you're seeing what's to come. And then you're horrified with what you're about to see. There were a couple times while we were watching the movie that I'm like, oh, if they do this, I don't know that I can watch this movie anymore. And they did it. And I kept watching it because
I thought I caught you
away.
doing
I was
this
doing
a couple of times.
I was doing this a lot. But like, I just couldn't stop. It was so engulfing. And I have to say, like, I will be posting the interviews on my YouTube as well that we got from one of the main actresses. I can't think of her name right now. But she had 2 movies at Sundance this year. She had this one and then the movie with Anne Hathaway. And so we got to interview her. And one, she's more amazing in person than she was on the big screen. And I'm just so excited to see more stuff from her because I believed so much that she was this person. At no point in my mind did I doubt that there is a person on earth that is like this.
There's more than one.
Oh, I know. I mean, she's like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
Like on steroids.
Right.
Because there's just kind of this detachment, right? And this it's just all focused right here. But again, it's called Birth Rebirth. And when it comes out, I will make sure that I post it so that you can go see it. And we'll do a more in-depth conversation about it once it's out in theaters for everybody to see. But this one was an A for me. And I know I don't give out A's very often. And I gave Living an A and I gave this an A. They're both A's for totally different reasons.
Right. Yeah. Within their routes, I'd probably be B+. And that's mostly because I think that first leap across the line, I think was just a little too quick. It was just like, I don't know. It seemed a little much. If there'd have been a little more waffling there, a little more angst about it, maybe.
On whose side? The mom?
The mom.
No. Nope. No.
Question. I mean,
no question.
She almost just went clinical, and it's just like but there was like no. I don't know, just a little slower, I think maybe, but no, but it doesn't really affect the overall effect of the film. Yeah. The overall effect of the film is great.
What was one of the favorite movies that you saw at Sundance this year? It doesn't have to be one that we saw together. No,
well, that favorite.
I'm sorry, kids. I'm eating my lunch, so.
Yeah, you're allowed. I still is just so. That's a long 95-minute documentary about Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, still
it's 95 minutes, movie. And it felt like nothing was rushed, nothing was omitted. And it's full.
Mm-hmm. There's so much. And I think we have that clip, but the director that we got to interview on the press line, again, all these videos will be up. You can see them on Visually Stunning, but they'll also be up here on my YouTube. But the director said, this isn't a documentary about being sick. This isn't a documentary about him having Parkinson's. He does have Parkinson's, but they got to be the closest to Michael J. Fox and really get everything he's ever wanted to say out from the time that he was born to now. Yeah. And we all grew up watching him. We all grew up with him in our living room, with him on TV. And it's a flashback to the 80s and 90s. And then everything, you'll be watching the documentary, which is going to be on Apple Plus, by the way.
Yep.
You're watching it and you'll remember when you saw the Teen Wolf. You'll remember when you saw Back to the Future. You'll remember when this and that. But then he fills in what was happening
Yeah.
at home, happening on the set.
Yeah, you
All these
remember all the
things.
professional stuff, and we get to see everything that was behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what. There's one moment in there when the director's asking him, he goes, why are we doing this now? And I honestly thought he was gonna say, because I don't know how much time I have left. Mm-hmm. And that's not what he said. Mm-mm. I don't recall exactly what he said.
He said because he doesn't know when he won't. It's along the lines of not being able to talk about it.
Right.
Because he's still in there all the way. You can tell. You can see from his eyes that there's so much he wants to say. But he can only
from here
say,
out.
Yeah, it's from here to here that's difficult. And so he wanted to make sure that he had control over what was being said, that the story was coming from him, and he didn't know how much longer he would be able to convey that information. And that was so powerful. And I also didn't know that he had it for like 9 to 10 years before he even told anyone. He got it at 29 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm 43, and I feel like if something like that happened, I would be devastated. 29, you're still a kid. Like, you're just a kid. You're in your 20s, and this happens to him.
And he can do no wrong at that point. He's invulnerable, but he's not.
Yeah. Like, everybody was giving him everything he wanted. And I do like how open he was about how he was a jerk. Like, he was this kid that nobody questioned him. Nobody said no. And he's like, I caught myself there. I caught myself in those moments. And like the story about getting blackout drunk with Woody Harrelson, like, I didn't even know they hung out, and the fact that he was so broke at one point that he's eating jelly packets, like jelly out of little jelly packets. Those are the things that we don't know. And one of the things that at least 4 people have asked me now, because I haven't posted any pictures of him. You did get a good picture of him, but I took some pictures of him on the press line, and a lot of people were like, was it just really hard to see him in person? I said, well, at first it was kind of hard because, again, we grew up with this person. I feel like I know this person, and you think somebody's got this debilitating disease, but then when you see him in the documentary, like, he doesn't want anybody to feel sorry for himself, and I don't feel sorry for him now. Like, when I first saw him on the press line, like, now that I know, I just feel frustrated for him.
As he does for himself. I mean,
that's what he feels. He feels frustrated
all the time. I mean, he can't, well, not that he can't. The fact that he can't do what he wants at the speed that he wants.
Exactly.
And
he doesn't sit still as a person.
No, and that's where they took the title from, was because he couldn't sit still as a child. He ran his early career. He ran himself ragged. He was making Back to the Future and Family Ties at the same time. And in Parkinson's, he can't stop moving. And the one thing he needs to do to not fall down is slow down when he's trying to walk. He might still trip, but the faster he goes, the quicker it ends badly. So, I mean, it's just that frustration. He's like, he knows exactly what he wants to do. He knows he can do it. He just can't do it as quickly as he wants. And that's got to be frustrating. He can't tell a joke. He can't,
And they're all in there. You can tell.
Yeah. You can see it. It's right there. If you've ever been at a loss for words, now imagine that's your life 24/7.
Yeah. But I loved all the different mediums that they used. They had animation. They had clips from actual, footage from things. They had interviews with him. And I just thought the flow, like you said, it was so great how they edited all these different mediums together to really, like, you felt like you were moving as fast as he moved.
Yeah.
You felt like you were getting swept up in what he got swept up in. And
they had a lot of recreations with a body double.
Yeah.
Which was also cool. So you got to see, real footage of him interspersed with the recreations, and it's just paced so at times frenetically.
Yeah.
That I can't imagine living my life at that speed.
Yeah.
And he did it for a long time. Even after he stopped being able to do it, he was still doing it.
Yeah.
what's the analogy? Lou Gehrig retires from baseball. I have Lou Gehrig's disease. Well, it wasn't his disease at the time. Right. 4 months later or something, he's dead. And everyone's like, that's ridiculous. He should have not been able to be playing baseball at the point he was retiring, but he was. He willed himself to do it. Michael J. Fox willed himself so far to the point where he couldn't. And now he's trying to will himself to do normal things.
Yeah.
And that's,
it was just so charming. It's to me, it was so nice to hear someone talk about themselves in such a real way. He has flaws. He's made mistakes. His wife, when he met her on set, couldn't have cared less about him. Called him out on his shit, just like, and I love her, and she has stuck by him. And the way that the relationship that they have has to be hard. I mean, you've seen people break up for less things.
Right.
His kids were there at the premiere as well. We saw them kind of rush past the red carpet, but then seeing them in the show, and just hearing people talk about him, in a real way. It was as charming as you think it's going to be when somebody says Michael J. Fox has a documentary.
Right,
like
exactly.
You don't know quite what you're going to get, and then you get in there and you realized I needed this, and I didn't even know that I needed to know these things.
Yeah, it's just the one that minute for minute was probably the best film we saw, or that I saw while we were there. And there's good films. Don't think I'm running everything else down. But yeah,
the storytelling, the film, like just
the construction,
editing,
the material, all
the music,
of it. It's just
everything is there. It's definitely one that I think people are going to be like, oh, it's a crowd pleaser, so I'm not going to see it. Or they're going to say it's Michael J. Fox, I'm going to see it because I see everything that he's in. So you're going to have both of those. And I would just say, as soon as it's out on Apple Plus, watch it. Yep. And then come back here, because then we really want to get into it, and you can actually have a big conversation with us. I would love to have just like somebody that watches us be on the show.
I know, right?
And let's talk about it. So I'm going to come back to that at another time. We almost thought that we weren't going to get into that.
I know.
And I was like, let's try.
I know we were split. We actually, that was one of the times we split up. Because I was across the street at a 6 p.m. showtime, and I had a 6:30.
Picture of the line, and I'm like, get over here.
The not line, I know, right? I was like, okay, I'm coming. So yeah, I was glad we got into that. And I couldn't believe that theater was maybe 2/3 full.
It's because the night before was the premiere, and that was at the Eccles, and it was a sold out.
Yeah, it was packed.
Instance, and so I just think that that's what happened. But I'm happy that we got in. Another one that I got into, but 15 minutes after it had started, is the Brooke Shields documentary.
How was that?
So that was equally as, I think it was equally as good. It didn't have the same, I don't want to say magic that the Michael J. Fox one did, because I think everyone needs to see the Brooke Shields documentary. I think it's very important. I'm going to get into the Brooke Shields documentary when I do the episode about the press lines. And we're going to get into misogyny, and we're going to get into predators, and we're going to get into all that stuff. And hopefully I can have a guest or two on that one, and we can really jump into that. I know you're like thinking, well, that's a good time. Right. There was a lot of things that happened at Sundance this year that I witnessed that I didn't think I was going to witness. And I'm upset about it. And I think the more I witnessed it, the more I saw it other places, because it was on my mind, where I don't think I would have noticed it.
Yep.
And then I go into Magazine Dreams, which one thing that I wish Sundance would do when we can pick the movies that we want to watch and we put them in our calendar, put a runtime on there. Because I had no idea how long Magazine Dreams was.
Right.
And I wanted to go into Brooke Shields right after. And Magazine Dreams was almost 2.5 hours long. It was a little too long. I think it's like 2 hours, 15 minutes. And that was, and I'm not going to get too much into that on this episode, because I know you haven't seen it, but I think it is one of the most important and powerful roles that Jonathan Majors has ever chosen. There are some problems with the movie. One, it being too long.
Right.
But it kind of talks about these things too. His character is this character who wants to be a bodybuilder, but he has gone through so many traumas in his life. Like he has picked, if you've ever been through a trauma, to try and get out of that trauma, you pick a thing, sometimes unknowingly, and you obsess about it. When I was going through my divorce and I was so devastated, I picked the gym and I obsessed about it. And I went every day. Sometimes I went 2 times a day. But he obsesses about it because he doesn't know how to go through his traumas. Even though he's seeing a therapist, he lies to his therapist every week. He doesn't know how to interact with people. He has no social, like he's almost on the spectrum.
Right.
But there's also some misuse of humans in this a little bit. But it's such a departure from him. I think he has chosen so many smart roles in his very young career. And I'm very excited that we get 3 movies with him this year. This one, and then in 2.5 weeks, we get Quantum Mania. And then 2.5 to 3 weeks after that, we get Creed 3. All in 1 year. So I'm super excited, but it was a really compelling movie and a really compelling character for him. But so I rush out of that, and you have to go all the way out into the tent and back in again.
Yep.
And she's like, do you want to go? What are you here for? And I said, Brooke Shields. She's like, it's already started. I said, can I go in? And she says, yes. So I run in, and I get into it. And, I definitely want to see the first 15 minutes that I missed. But again, another character that we grew up watching. I know that the movie Sahara that she is in, not the Sahara that came out 10 years ago with Matthew McConaughey, but she made a movie called Sahara where she was the blue-eyed demon, and it's a car race through the desert. I watched this movie as like an elementary student all the time. And it was like her biggest bomb of a movie ever. And I loved it. I watched it. I never saw Pretty Baby, which was probably good because I was way too young to have seen that movie. But one of my favorite scenes in the movie is towards the end of this documentary. And there was 2 parts. So I don't know when they put it on Hulu that it's going to be in sections. But when they showed it to us, they said end of part 1.
Right.
And then they went to part 2. So I don't know if there's going to be more or if it's going to be in sections, but it is going to be on Hulu. But she's sitting at the table with her husband and her daughters, who are now high school and college age girls. And they are basically telling her that the things that happened to her when she was younger was not okay. And she's like, well, what do you mean? Because she also holds in that she did these things for the reason that she thought she was doing them at 11. Being nude in a sex scene in a movie at 11, 10 and 11 years old wouldn't happen now.
Nope.
Right? But she still chose it for the art. Her mother didn't have an issue with it. So I know she has this conflict of, I know that it's not the right thing to do, but it was also a project that was close to me. And her kids it's not your fault that you don't have a problem with it because you were a child when it happened. But it's her girls telling her these things because kids these days know so much more than we did when we were younger. And back in the 80s when everything was okay, nobody had an issue. The fact that her mom allowed her to take nude photos at 9 for this photographer. And then as soon as she got popular at 13 and 14, 16 years old, that photographer was allowed by the court system to publish those nude photos, which would now be considered pornographic.
Yes.
And the court system said it was okay. She tried to take him to court and make it so he could not publish those photos, which were meant to be for one specific project and not meant to be for the whole world to see.
Right.
But and she talks about her mother a lot, and they had a very strange relationship. She talks about Andre Agassi and what that was. And she had a lot of people from her life that we know, that they all kind of were in, the system together growing up in Hollywood, talking about how they saw her during these times of her life. She went to Princeton at the height of her career. And this is hard to say. When she's 18, at the height of her career, She stops acting for 4 years and goes to Princeton, and then comes back, and nobody wants to give her work, because that's what happens to female actresses. Now there's 100 other pretty young female actresses, and to say that, you know, at 22 she's not still a young female actress that people want to, it's just such a crazy world. It's getting better than how it was, but she didn't stop working. There was nothing but beneath her. She went to Asia, she went to Europe, she did commercials there, and then she was on Friends, and she had Suddenly Susan and all of these things, and people found out that she was pretty and funny at the same time. You know, so there's just a lot of things that I learned about her in this documentary that I didn't know, and a lot of things that I really thought we were done with in Hollywood that we are not even done with.
No, it's people.
Yeah.
People suck. I say people, and I mean people. Everyone is exploitive of somebody for their own purposes. And as long as people are around, that's just that's how it's going to be. And all we can do is try to minimize it. But they're, you know, people suck. Bumper sticker.
So what was another movie that you saw before we end here that you really think people need to check out as soon as it's out?
I think of the ones that I saw and that I liked, I think Eileen, which is the other one with Marin Ireland in it.
Yeah.
Anne Hathaway,
I haven't
Thomasin McKenzie, and Shea Wiggum. I think that's really well done. I think that one, it's probably an A-, and that's just because the cast is so good. They're just so good. It's a period piece. I think 50s. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, Anne Hathaway. It's like, you know what? This is technically Thomasin McKenzie's movie. Yeah. Anne Hathaway is the supporting actress here. Okay. And that's okay. When she's on screen, she's great. Marin Ireland from Birth Rebirth, she's in it. She is an important but not a lot of screen time part.
Okay.
But she is just as damaged a person as she is in Birth Rebirth, but
that's what she said on the press line.
In a completely different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's a broken person too. And Shea Wiggum he's great. If you don't know the name, look him up. You'll be like, oh, that guy.
Yeah.
He's just really solid as Thomasin McKenzie's father. But it's just one of those slow burn period pieces that starts as one thing, and then by the last 10-15 minutes it becomes something completely different, but in a really good way. And then it's got this weird ambiguous, it feels like a 70s thriller ending, the way physically or cinematically the way they shoot it.
Okay.
It's just weird. But it's just, again, it's got a cast and everyone just fits in it so well, and the material is just really compelling in one way for most of the film, and it makes the left turn. It's not quite a horror, but it's this weird family drama, and then it becomes a psychological thriller at the end. So I just really, really enjoyed that. I mean, I saw a couple other documentaries that the topics were good, but I don't think the documentaries were put together that well. I have a huge disappointment movie that apparently I'm going to be alone in my disappointment, but
tell us the name of it and then we'll talk about it on a different podcast.
When you watch Infinity Pool.
Oh yeah, I already knew that was going to be.
That is the movie
that was my biggest disappointment of Sundance in general. We'll talk about the press line of Infinity Pool on my next podcast.
Yeah, I talk about that. I dropped that video today over on my channel, and so go check it out in Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. But yeah, so the press line was disappointing, and I was like, but at least the movie should be good. With Brandon Cronenberg and Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth, I said it's gotta be good, and I was horribly. Someone, like I said, one of my fellow audience members came out and goes, "It's lurid garbage," and I was like, "Well, I agree with half of that. It's definitely lurid."
Yeah.
There's so much good in there.
Yeah.
And I feel weird telling them they need to cut it down from $157.
Yeah.
To to 95 minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
lop 20 minutes off that thing and tighten up the edit, and I think it's a better film. But I was just pissed. This was the uncut, so it's already going to get cut. What he brought to Sundance is the uncut version, and it is clear. I mean, if he released it to theaters, it might not be NC-17. It might be X.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
if there's for one scene, if he cuts one scene, then it might be NC-17, and then he's got to cut some more to get it down to a hard R. But it's just, it's too meta for its own good. I think really is my problem with that, and so I was terribly disappointed, especially after Mia Goth gave us X and Pearl last year. And
I didn't watch either of those.
Oh my god, those are so.
That's not my jam. At some point, I will try. I have copies of them. I just haven't watched them.
And what's funny about those is that those are chock full of sex too. So it's not the sex that's the issue. It's the construction in Infinity Pool that is. Man, I wanted it, and I'm like a C- on Infinity Pool. And so it pissed me off, really.
Yeah.
There's if I don't have an opinion about a film and I don't think it's that good, I'm like, it's not that good. If I'm thinking a film is going to be good and it should be good and it's not, then I just get angry about it.
Yeah.
And this falls into terms of anger and disappointment where Dunkirk is, but I just loathe Dunkirk.
I love Dunkirk
because I was ready. I went into Dunkirk and I was like, dude, Christopher Nolan more movie.
We have a new Christopher Nolan movie coming out this year too.
Oppenheimer, I know, and I'm looking forward to that. But Dunkirk, I was just pissed. I checked my watch 6 times in that movie. Waiting for it to be over, and I just got angrier. So I hate that movie with a passion that's really hard to determine. I'm disappointed in Infinity Pool, so I'm angry about it, but not as angry as I was at Dunkirk, because I see the movie I could fix what he has with Infinity Pool. I would need to redo a lot of Dunkirk to make that a movie that I would enjoy. And that pissed, then like I said, and then I was just angry. I was just so angry about Dunkirk. But yeah, Infinity Pool, I was just, there's too much. Titillation for titillation's sake ceases to become titillating.
Yeah.
And it's so far. It's just so far that you're just inured to the whole. You just don't care. You just get numb by the end of it. and I get it. I think now in interviews he's trying to say that's kind of what he's trying to do. He's it's kind of a metaphor for these people in this film, and I'm just I don't think he put that much thought into it. I think he had a good idea, and it is a cool idea.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of just Cronenberg times 10, and eventually and I like Cronenberg. I like him. I like his dad. I'm the guy that should have come out raving about this.
Yeah.
And I can't.
That was very surprising.
And it surprised me, and I was very disappointed. The other one, two other documentaries, real quick. I don't know how much longer.
You got to be quick because we only have 2 minutes left, and I got to tell everybody where to go find you.
Okay, The Cult at the End of the World, really cool background stuff. That documentary is not put together really well. Deep Rising, narrated by Jason Momoa. He's not a good narrator.
We might have to do a Sundance wrap-up part 2 because there's just so much to talk about. I haven't even talked about all the movies that I've seen yet. Thank you, Mark, for being on this live episode of Friday Movie Spotlight. You can see Mark, Visually Stunning Podcast. He's on all the social medias. He's on YouTube. I do have on my YouTube channel links to other podcasts that I've done with him on his show, and that can lead you right over to his YouTube page. And then I will be back live tomorrow talking about the press lines, talking more about the unforgivable things that I saw at Sundance this year. And then on Monday, you can go to Movies That Make Us and listen and or watch, or both, our Living episode. Go out and see Living this weekend at Megaplex. And I basically tomorrow and Sunday am writing all my reviews. I'm still watching movies. I'm watching the Shorts program and some other things. So all of my reviews will be written and up over the next couple of days up on whattoseewithval.com. And then next Friday, I will be back on Good Things Utah talking about 80 for Brady and a couple of other movies. But stick to my Facebook page and my Instagram as well, because you'll get all the updates, and maybe if you're in Utah, even some free tickets to some of the movies that are coming up. Thank you so much. Again, come back tomorrow. I'll be live again. Join the conversation with me. Follow Mark, Visually Stunning Podcast. Thank you, Mark.
No problem.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.